So starting off on today's show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to preview the baseball playoff series between the New York Yankees and the Cleveland Indians. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over each team's strengths and weaknesses, and then I'll let you know who I think will come up top in this series. So starting with the New York Yankees, their strengths, and they have two big ones, and one of them is literally their strength, that powerful hitting lineup that they have. Also, I think they have a great bullpen, and that's definitely one of their biggest strengths. So starting off with that bullpen, this year their bullpen ERA was 3.34. That's really good. But the most impressive stat is they led the league in strikeouts for their bullpen pitchers. They go so deep. They have David Robertson, Adam Warren, Dylan Betances, Chad Green, and then they have that great closer, Aroldis Chapman. They can just shorten games. I mean, if their starter gets you to the fifth, sixth inning, they are so powerful and so good that they can win games. It reminds me a lot of what the Cleveland Indians did last year, because the starting pitching isn't there for them. But if they can get you to that fifth inning with a lead, then they're on pace to win that game. And it's very scary if you're a team going against them, because you know you have to put up runs on these starters, or you could be shut out for the rest of the game. Going into that powerful lineup that I was talking about, they have three guys in the middle of that lineup that hit the ball and hit the ball far. Obviously, the pub goes to Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge hit 52 home runs, American League probably Rookie of the Year. There's a lot of holes in his swing, but when he connects with them, man, that guy hits them far. Now, in the second half of this season, his batting average plummeted. He was batting up in the 330s. For him, that is just an astronomical number. The law of averages brought that down, his batting average down to about more of a 260, 270, 280 hitter. But one of these guys you probably haven't heard of, I mean, you did if you watched the play-in game, Didi Gregorius. Now, he's been an unsung hero for this team, and, you know, for him, he's coming in filling a lot of shoes for Derek Jeter. I mean, he's the next shortstop that is anything since Derek Jeter. He hit 25 home runs. He had 80-plus RBIs. He batted cleanup in that lineup for the most of the year, too. So I don't think he gets a lot of talk and how dangerous of a hitter he really is. Another 280 hitter. And then you got Gary Sanchez behind the plate. We all know offensively he's really good. He had 33 home runs this year. Again, he's more of a 250, 260 type hitter. But this team as a whole hit a whole bunch of home runs, and they led the Major League Baseball, not just the American League, Major League Baseball in home runs. And now going over their weaknesses, I see three weaknesses in this team that are pretty glaring, to be honest with you. The starting pitching, their team defense, and their team strikeouts, not pitching-wise, but hitting-wise. Now, outside of Severino, there's really no other starter that's pitched well for long stretches of times. Now, they did address their situation a little bit with Sonny Gray, but since he's got over there in New York, he has been more up and down. He hasn't really been as consistent as they thought they were getting when they brought him in. They also have CC Sabathia and Masahiro Tanaka, but both those guys are either boom or bust. They either pitch really well, and with Tanaka, you just saw it. He pitched and he got 15 strikeouts in a game, or these guys are out in the second inning because they gave up a whole bunch of runs. So their team ERA as a starter, and this is including Severino, who had just an amazing year and probably would get a lot more talk if it wasn't for Corey Kluber and Chris Sale, but their team ERA for the starting pitchers only was 4.18, which is just a little high for me when you talk about playoff teams with great pitching. The other thing that they do, they strike out a lot. I mean, Aaron Judge should have set, but Girardi pulled him out, so he didn't break the record for most consecutive games with a strikeout. They strike out a lot. Gary Sanchez strikes out a lot. Todd Frazier strikes out a lot. Obviously, Aaron Judge strikes out a lot. They have a lot of holes in this lineup, and when they go against top-end starting pitching, that can be a problem. When you're seeing some of the fourth and fifth guys in the rotation and some of these bullpen guys that you won't see in the playoffs, they took advantage of those guys a lot. Now, I want to see if they will be able to shorten their swings in the playoffs and be a little bit more disciplined. And definitely, one of the worst things that the Yankees are defensively, they're just awful. Now, they don't rank awful team defensively. They're not at the bottom. They're more of the middle tier, but they're very bad situationally defense. Their catcher leads the league in pass balls and errors for that position, And that really is the backbone of your defense: catcher, shortstop, second base. And they just committed a lot of errors in bad moments. Okay, and now moving on to the Cleveland Indians and what I think their strengths and weaknesses are going into this postseason series. Now, take a moment and I'll give you my disclaimer. I took my heart out of this and I went strictly with logic and stats, and I really tried to remain as impartial as I possibly could for this. Now, I see a lot of strength to the Cleveland Indians. They won 102 games. I mean, you have a lot of strengths when you do that. I don't see a lot of weaknesses, but again, I'll give you what my opinions are. Pitching is a strength for this team, but specifically that bullpen, defense, and I also think they have the best manager going into the postseason this year. Now, going back to that bullpen, they had a team ERA of 2.89. I almost can't say it without laughing because it's just an insane stat. For a full season, your bullpen held per 9 innings a team under 3. That is ridiculously crazy stat. I really can't get over it. And they're very deep. This is the one thing that the Indians have, the Yankees have. And when you go so deep and yet you're so good, that is just an unbelievable strength. Now, they have Andrew Miller, Cody Allen, Brian Shaw, Joe Smith. Now, that's your matchup, 6th to 9th inning. If you can go boom, 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 game over, that's how they prefer to go. This year, I believe that there's an X factor that's coming out. Now, Andrew Miller last year was the only lefty that we had in our pitching staff, let alone in our bullpen, and he got overused a lot because of the matchups and where do you want to play him. Now, Andrew Miller's not just a lefty specialist. He can go against righties, but you see what I'm saying there. This year, when Andrew Miller got hurt, Tyler Alston stepped up and became what I think now is an X factor for this Cleveland Indians team, where he can match up in those mid-innings where they were using Andrew Miller a lot last year because of out of necessity. Now, I feel like he's going to come in there. Now, listen to his stats this year. So when Andrew Miller went out with the injury, he appeared since then he appeared in 30 games, totaling 20 innings. He had a whip of .95. Now, a whip is walks and hits per 9 innings. So that's just a really good stat. Anything under 1 is very, very, very good. He also had a strikeout ratio per 9 innings of 8.1. This is the biggest thing. He did not give up a single run. He went 30 appearances this year without giving up a single run. And this is why I think he is the X factor in that bullpen for the Cleveland Indians for that middle inning matchup lefty type thing, if in case they need him, if Bauer can't go or if Tomlin can't go into the in that 5th, 6th inning range. That's a very smart pickup for the Indians to have in that middle of the game there. So I also think the bullpen, the rich get richer, because I do believe Danny Salazar and Clevenger fill plenty of needs out there. Now, they can be used in high leverage situations because they can throw the ball 95, 96, 98 plus when it comes to it. So they can go for an inning and just go all out. But just in case, if something happens where the starter can't go more than an inning or two, now you have 2 guys out there that can give you long relief appearances. So in case something happens in 2 straight games, they have the opportunity of not wasting the bullpen over multiple games, which I think is going to be something that is not talked about a lot when the roster was released, but something that is a very intriguing possibility because they can be used in 2 different ways. Now, moving on to that defense, they were number 1 in the American League in defense this year. Number 1. So at every position, they had a guy grade out top 5. Besides Jay Bruce, he joined late. He's an adequate right fielder, has a very good arm, so you don't lose a lot out there. And trust me, the defense, every position, they had some that ranked in the top 5. It was ridiculously good on Fangraphs when I looked at their defensive stats. They're number 2 overall in the league, and Miami was number 1. They have a great ballpark for defense, but the one thing also that they have is they have a lot of versatility out there. Now, they have Urshela up at third base, but they also have Eric Gonzalez that can play some third base, can play some second, can play some short. Same with Gio. He can play some third, second, short. Ramirez can go from second to third, even play some outfield. Kipnis, second, center. He's proven that he's a pretty decent center fielder, too. There's a lot of versatility in this lineup on defense that they can use, and they're all very good at that position, too. So, And obviously, we talk about Tito Francona. He obviously is the best manager in the postseason. He proved it last year with a depleted starting staff, and so the hitting wasn't always there. He was able to use what he had and molded it into a winning team that got him within one inning of winning the World Series. So those are the strengths for the Cleveland Indians. And moving on to the weaknesses. Now, when you're a 102 win team, you don't have a lot of weaknesses. And now everyone might say I have my homer glasses on, but really when you're that good of a team, you're very complete and you don't have very glaring weaknesses. And this Indians team doesn't. But they do have some. And I've highlighted two that I fear going into the postseason. Now, the catcher and third base positions offensively scare me. And also, and I'm reaching here, but I'll go over this in a little bit more detail here in a couple minutes. Depth in the starting rotation for the playoffs. Now, starting off with the catcher, third base position offensively, we know that Gio Urshela, Roberto Perez, and Yan Gomes are not great offensive players right this year. They're just not. They've been very timely, and yes, that's a good thing. But at the catcher position, we had the sixth worst batting average for catchers in Major League Baseball. Now, they did mask a little bit about their struggles with having a lot of production in the RBI category. They did have the fifth most RBIs as a catching unit, but they did strike out the most in all of baseball for catchers. So there's a lot of holes when you start having the catcher and now the third base with Urshela. Now, he's an A++ defender, and nobody will argue that. But he is a D- hitter. I mean, the guy batted .224 this season, 1 home run, 15 RBIs. He looked lost at the plate a lot. Now, he did have some timely hits, and I'll give him that. But when you start getting into the postseason where you're facing off against the best pitchers that each team has to offer, and what the New York Yankees present in the bullpen, you don't like having holes, and those two position in the lineup, the catcher and third base, looks like they're going to be holes. Now, I don't see the Indians moving back to their original starting lineup of Kipnis at second, Jose at third, and then having an outfield like Ajax and Bruce and Brantley and Greg Allen. I don't see that happening. So I'm going on the assumption of what I've heard, and I do have some knowledge of this, that Kipnis will be playing center field, and Jose will be playing second. So third base is going to be occupied by Urshela. So that to me worries me just a little bit, because you do have two places in the lineup that aren't at the highest quality and when you're looking at it, what that can do is it can stop rallies and stop big innings, and so you're relying on your pitching staff to be putting up zeros and avoiding big innings because you're not sure if your team can rally for 4 or 5 runs in an inning. So that's, I mean, I know I'm reaching a little bit, but that's one weakness that concerns me. But also, a concern, maybe not, just I'm intrigued when it comes to the depth in the starting rotation. Now, you can say, Matt, man, they had a great starting rotation this year. Why are you worried? It's a relative unknown when it comes to postseason. Now, we know who Corey Kluber is. Corey Kluber is a Cy Young. He is one of the best pitchers in baseball. Now, he's proven that last year in the postseason that he can do what he does in the regular season there. Who hasn't is Trevor Bauer. Now, Bauer's coming off his best season ever. Last year, he didn't pitch well. He was very inconsistent even before he got almost cut off his finger. And then afterwards, we all know what happened with the drone. And he was never the same for the Indians that postseason. And your third guy this year is going to be Carlos Cookie Carrasco. And although he had an amazing season, he hasn't not once started a postseason game. So he hasn't been a part of it. He was hurt last year for the run. So yes, he was around it, and he can kind of get what the atmosphere is about. But until you pitch in it, you don't know how a player is going to react. So those are a little concerning to me. Obviously, Tomlin, who will be your fourth starter, he proved last year he's a bulldog. He's going to give you everything he got. And your bullpen can pick up for the lack of innings that your starters can give you, but you don't want to be falling into Kluber pitching all these innings and then your bullpen picking up the rest like you did last year, and you kind of wear out if you were making a long run. So that's what I think are going to be the strengths and weaknesses for the New York Yankees and the Cleveland Indians. Overall, I think this is going to be a very intriguing series. It reminds me a lot of when the Indians and Yankees met in the late 90s. When the Indians had their core guys get together. They went to a World Series before, and they were poised to make another run, and hopefully it ends differently this time and the Indians do win the World Series. But the Yankees were getting ready to start this run, and they got their core four together with Jeter and Bernie Williams and Scott Brosius and Mariano Rivera, and they got all these guys together, and they were young, and they weren't ready for that big moment just yet, and that's what the Indians took advantage of. And I really do feel like it's building up something like that, where these teams are going to face each other in the postseason. Now this year, I do have, overall, I think the Cleveland Indians are a better team. I think they're going to win this series. I see it being more of a 3-1 type series. The Yankees getting one win at home, but it's going to be a very intriguing series. I'm really looking forward to the matchups of this Indians offense versus the Yankees bullpens, and also very intriguing to see this pitching staff go up against the Yankees lineup. So my thoughts, 3-1 Indians. Let's go Tribe.